Welcome to the TLI workshop on mentoring. My name is Abhijit Joshi. I'm your host for tonight. Before I introduce the speaker, let me acknowledge the work of Maithili Prabhu, the event manager, Ines Benshek, the PR manager, the tech guru, Carrie Lynn Morgan. Our today's speaker sees Toastmaster as a way to continually grow personally and professionally. He has worked across startups and Fortune 500 companies. Running marathon is his passion. He has traveled to over 50 clubs in 5 different continents, including Antarctica. He enjoys sharing his experience to help fellow Toastmasters and colleagues to reach outside of their comfort zone. Please help me welcome distinguished Toastmaster Satish Shenoy.
Thank you, Abhijit. For a minute there, I was thinking, who's he talking about? But I finally figured it out. It's really good. All right. So, folks, we have a great session planned for you tonight. In this session, we're going to go into a deep dive into one of my favorite topics, mentoring. We'll learn some of the expectations for mentors and mentees. We will talk about some best practices and myths. Specifically, we'll focus on a few things, right? So we will have, Abhijit, if you can put up the chart, we'll talk about really 5 things here. The first one is, Abhijit, we're looking, yeah, there we go. Yeah, so the first thing we'll talk about is challenges, because we want to make sure that we are on the same page when it comes to talking about what are some of the common challenges. The second thing we'll talk about is what are the expectations for a mentor and a mentee in any relationship that mentors and mentees have. The third is going to be some of the tips. I call them secrets, maybe you call them tips around mentoring. How can we make these mentoring relationships successful? Fourth, we'll dispel some myths of mentoring. And fifth, and finally, we'll do a call to action. Now, there are a few things to keep in mind about this session. This is more of a workshop type session. So we want this to be really interactive. And so please post your questions in the chat box or send them privately to our wonderful moderators, Carolyn and Abhijit, and we'll get to them as soon as possible. Second, a copy of the worksheet has been posted in the chat. So to get the most out of this workshop, do download that worksheet and follow along as we go through the workshop. Third, if you can, I think a lot of people have turned their video on. I'd request that you turn your video on, because it's really makes this experience much better for everybody, and I feel connected to you. And then fourth and finally, we want to make sure that you get a copy of this presentation. We'll do that right after this workshop. So no need for really feverishly taking notes or anything of that sort. We're going to give you a copy of the presentation. In fact, we'll give you a detailed version of this presentation that you're seeing on the screen. Now, let me ask you folks, if you think about mentoring, imagine that you're in a great mentoring relationship. What would that be like for each of you? Let's start there. Any volunteers, anybody to talk about how this mentoring relationship ideally would be like? Any volunteers?
Yes, I think the most successful relationship between me and my mentor is the mentor can always figure out the reasons of my issues or the why. So based on that, we can figure out a solution that fits into the real situation, not just sharing the reasons on the surface, but the underlying causes. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Gavin. You talked about focusing on the solution. The mentor understands the underlying causes. I mean, these things really help accelerate your learning. Anybody else?
Joel here.
Yeah, go ahead, Joel.
Definitely, I want to say trust and that friendship between a mentor and a mentee. Being able to be open with your insecurities and your the things you're nervous about and scared about, so the mentor could go ahead and help you. I think that's very important, and by being open to a mentee like that, it doesn't only create a mentor-mentee bond, but it also creates something deeper, a friendship and a connection.
That's wonderful, Joel. The question was, imagine that you can have the mentoring relationship of your dreams. What would that be like for you? That was the question. A couple of people asked what the question was. Probably they're joining late, but I'm glad to kind of repeat it. Anybody else? Maybe one more.
I guess I'll go. Daniel from San Jose.
Thank you, Dan.
I do have a mentor who has been helping me in networking, and I prefer his help, which is being persistent. Beginning of our whole mentorship program between each other, I was very timid. I was not showing up to events and stuff that he's been telling me to do over the years. And he was kept on being persistent, made sure I showed up, made sure I studied, made sure I looked up at people. And that really drove me to be more open and be more forward with my personal involvement in what I want to improve. So persistence is what I like to see in a mentor.
Fantastic. Thank you, Danielle. Actually, I should have acknowledged, Joel said the word trust. We'll talk about this a little later in the presentation, in the workshop. So trust is also a very critical piece. You talked about persistence, Danielle. Again, that consistency, that persistence is going to be critical because you want that mentoring relationship to last a long time, especially if you pick the right mentor. We'll talk about how to find the right mentor. We'll figure out how to establish trust. All of those things we'll talk about as we go through this. So now let's talk about the typical challenges in mentoring, right? Because before we deep dive into me sharing some tips and some of the secrets, if you will, I want to first get on the same page with respect to the challenges one finds in mentoring. The first thing is unrealistic expectations. Let me tell you what I mean. I'll use myself as an example. Early on in my mentoring journey, I was expecting my mentor to really set the tone, to drive the relationship, because I thought, well, the mentor knows everything. I really should let the mentor drive this. So to me, if you think about that for a minute, that's unrealistic, and you'll see why as we go through this session. The second thing that is a challenge is unclear goals. Why is that important? We'll get to that. The goals, I will say, are the foundation for any mentoring, because if you want to pick the right mentor, the goals will drive that mentor that you pick. The third is lack of preparation. So you want this relationship to be not burdensome to the mentor. If you're the mentee in the relationship, you really want to prepare the mentor as you go through this journey. And so preparation is critical. Absence of follow through. The mentor expects you to follow through, and so that's important. Lack of trust. This goes both ways, right? You want to have the mentor and the mentee have a trustworthy relationship. When you share things in that, in those sessions that you have with the mentor, you want there to be complete trust and confidentiality, all of that, right? So the couple last things that I have come across. One is lack of commitment. I've had mentors who, for various reasons might not have been as committed. Maybe they didn't align to the goals I had, or maybe they things changed. That's okay, as long as you communicate that. And the last one I'll point out is for the mentors to be rushing to judgment. Now, why do I say this? Early on in my mentoring journey, what I found was, you're nervous. You look up to this person that's maybe your mentor, and then you say you might be not doing things as well in the first couple of meetings. So it's important for the mentor to not rush to judgment. And likewise, it's also important for the mentee or the protege to not rush to a judgment in those first, few meetings, if you will. Sit down, get to know the other person, and really try to engage with the other person and see what's behind them, what's driving them, so on. Now, let me ask you, what are some of the challenges that you have come across in your mentoring journeys? Anybody? Do these kind of help you? Are these in line with what you've experienced? Because I would really want to make this also about what your experience has been, and hopefully you take something away from what I'm sharing. Anybody want to volunteer? Any comments about challenges that you've encountered in mentoring?
Go ahead, Rajesh.
Oh, okay. So sometimes, some people have a wish, but the hunger is not there. So they will have complete preparation as this is what I want to do, but they don't see that they want a prize without paying the price with a C. So at that time, you would definitely waste a mentor's time because it's an opportunity cost for the mentor. He or she could have invested the time with somebody else.
Very nice, Rajesh. Very important thing to keep in mind. Anyone else?
I would say a difference in values. The mentee basically has an entirely different outlook than what you have or are prepared to offer them. It just doesn't sync.
Yeah, that's a really good one, Rita. Thank you. Maybe a last one. What challenges have you encountered that are beyond what I shared?
Shabir?
Yeah.
I think mentor jumping in to help. And that works from the mentor's perspective, but it may not work from the mentee's perspective because the challenging and the problems are different perception between what the mentor thinks and the mentee thinks. So it's having an open-ended question. And I think that also works if the person doesn't have a passion. You can ask the person what else would be passionate having this as your goal. How can it be passionate? Because a lot of times people don't know there is something else.
So the passion of the fire, I mean, Rajesh was talking about the fire, passion you're talking about, very, very, very good points. So thank you. All right, at this point, what I want to do quickly is have Abhijit launch a poll. Basically I'm going to ask you two questions. These are quick yes or no questions and gives me an idea of where each one is in the session, in terms of the mentoring journeys. Go ahead and please answer those questions.
71% are saying no.
No mentor outside of Toastmasters, right? Very interesting. I think this session will be really useful for those people. So I'm glad, in some ways, I'm glad that I can, hopefully the session will help them.
Approximately 66% are saying yes.
They have mentored someone inside or outside of Toastmasters, right?
Yes.
All right. That's a higher number than I would have thought, but that's great that they've done that. Maybe they have a lot to share now. This should be a useful session even for them. So you'll learn from some of those people. All right, so that's great. Thank you very much for answering those polls. I think it give us a good idea of what the audience is like. All right, the second thing we'll do now, we are in the second section, which is about expectations for mentors and mentees. Now, this is a critical part to understand, right? From a Toastmaster definition standpoint, a mentor is caring and respectful, experienced and knowledgeable, committed and dependable. In other words, mentors are about caring and sharing. And so that's important, right? For me, if I simplify things, mentors are always about caring and sharing. So if you look at your worksheet, please follow along. I have provided you a worksheet. The flip side of this relationship, if you think about this, is the mentee or the protege. How should mentees behave? They should be trustworthy. They should be reliable. They should be goal-oriented and accountable. They should be adaptable and very open to feedback. Now, if I simplify that definition, it's about two things. It's about trusting and acting. And by the way, these things, this simplification was provided by a really good book that I read recently called The Art of Mentoring by Dr. Ravi Gundlapalli. Actually, he talks about simplifying these relationships. Mentors are about caring and sharing. Mentees are about trusting and acting. Hopefully that's helpful. Now, if you think about what the expectations are for a mentor, they need to be available. They need to listen actively. This is a critical part of every mentor, what every mentor can do, because only by listening actively can they really help. The third thing is extremely critical. And I've seen this on both sides, right? From a mentor standpoint as well as a mentee standpoint, which is understanding the learning style of the mentee. This is critical because you want, one of the reasons why you want to mentor is you want to accelerate your learning. And by understanding the learning style, you're going to help that mentee or protege to learn quickly. The fourth thing that a mentor is expected to do is withhold judgment. We've talked about this, don't rush to judgment as a mentor. And fifth is be committed. These are all things that is expected for a mentor. Now, if you think about what are the expectations for a mentee or a protege, they need to do a few things. First thing is have a clear goal. What do I mean by clear goal? Now, some of you might have heard of SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Now, why is that important? Well, because in order to pick the right mentor, you need to be clear about what goals you have. Let me give you an example. Now, Abhijit said, I ran 7 marathons across 7 continents and finished last year. If I want to get into running, then I need to be clear about what kind of running I want to do. Is it a 5K? Is it a 10K? Is it a half marathon, a full marathon? At least I need to be clear about what that goal is. I also had the goal of achieving running across all 7 continents within 7 years. Again, time-bound, relevant, achievable goals. One could argue that could you achieve running across Antarctica, but that's the goal I set, right? Very clear goals. When you engage with a mentor, as a mentee, you want to set a clear agenda. Now, the reason you want to do that is because you want to be clear getting into the meeting what your outcomes are going to be. What do you want to achieve in that meeting? How can the mentor help you? It's your responsibility, I think, as a mentee to actually set that agenda. The third thing I think of is being open to feedback. This is very, very critical. Having that mindset, the growth mindset, comes from being open to feedback. So that's extremely critical as you go into a relationship with a mentor. Following up is another one. And then last is meeting consistently. Now, somebody talked about persistence, but I would put a consistence as a close second there, right? You don't want to meet your mentor once a year or once every 6 months, because that's not going to help you. You want to meet more consistently, maybe every month, maybe every couple of weeks if the mentor is open to that. Like that's what I do in my mentoring relationships. Now, let me ask you, are there any questions at this point? We talked about the expectations of a mentor and a mentee. We talked about what the definitions are. Are there questions at this point? Carolyn or Abhijit?
Rajesh has a question.
Yeah.
Sure.
The $1,000,000 question, Satish, everybody will have is, how do I find the right mentor?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked, Rajesh. We are going to talk about this. In fact, I think it's coming up next or soon enough. We'll come across this. This is, if there's one thing you take away from the session, it's how do you find and keep that mentor? I'll tell you why. Because when I first started this journey, I was thinking, how the heck do I find my mentor? Where do I look? Do I ask my friends or family? What do I do to find that mentor? Right? So that's a question. That's a fantastic question, Rajesh. I'm glad you asked. We're going to talk about it in a little bit. If you can hold on to that question, please do bring it up if I don't answer it.
Gavin, go ahead.
Okay. I'm wondering what's the definition of mentoring here? How do you define the mentoring here?
So as I mentioned, Gavin, you can define mentoring in various ways. I was simplifying it by saying it's about sharing and caring, right? So you care about your mentee, but you also share that knowledge, that skills, that experience that will help that mentee, right? Think about a mentor that you've had in Toastmasters. You want to learn about vocal variety or gestures or whatever it is, right? You're not doing it quite right. And so, the mentor cares about your progress, but also shares how it can be done.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. But here my question is, what's the definition of mentoring, the mentorship? Because there are different types of mentoring or mentorship, I believe, in the real world. So what are you specifically referring to here?
I'm referring, so there are various ways to look at mentoring. I actually covered that later on. There are, when I think of mentoring, I think of unconscious mentors and conscious mentors. I think about supporters. I think about critics. I think about sponsors, right? So there are different types of mentors. Is that what you're referring to, Gavin?
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. I'm glad you asked.
Thank you.
I'll get into that detail. Actually, it's interesting you bring that up because I was not clear when I started, and so I'll offer that up as we go through. All right. So, yeah,
we have one more question. I think this is specific to Toastmasters, but asking, is the mentor-mentee relationship for 1 year, 2 years, forever? And can you change mentors? And can you have a mentor in another club?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. Who's this asking?
It looks like Jane, maybe?
Oh, nice.
Jane
Thank
Chen.
you, Jane. I've been in Toastmasters for about 7 years now. And I have probably 3 or 4 mentors. I mentee, I'm a mentor for 2 or 3 people, right? So there is no restriction of how long you should have this mentoring relationship. In fact, I would say the longer the better, because this mentor sees your progress and can help you as you grow, as you develop. This mentor can really help you. The other thing I would say is about whether it should be in a club or not. I would say it should be anywhere. In fact, I have mentored people across the globe. Now that we have gotten to this COVID situation, any mentoring would be online anyway. So, there's no boundaries there, whether it's within the club or even within the country field. It can be across the globe, right? And so I don't think there are any such, we shouldn't think, at least I don't think about these, should it be within the club or not? So hopefully that helps. Okay, so shall we move on to the next section? Are we ready for a poll? Maybe one more question for the audience.
Hi, this is Naresh. I just have a comment.
Did we lose somebody who was speaking? I can't hear the person.
Well, this was Naresh. So I just had a comment on the discussion. So
yeah, please go ahead. Please.
Want to do the poll right now, or?
Yeah, go ahead and do the poll. You can speak when you're doing the poll also if you're
Oh, okay.
good at
Well,
multitasking like I am.
I don't believe my multitasking abilities, but let me just quickly put out my comment out there. So I think there was some discussion about mentoring versus coaching. I think somebody had a question about that. The way, and this is just my opinion, the way I think about mentoring is it's like a parent-child relationship wherein you're not judging the person, you're always supporting, no matter how good or bad the child have done, your parents always will support you. Coaching, on the other hand, would be more like teaching, where more like a teacher and student relationship, wherein you will get critiqued, points will be deducted, kind of thing. So that's how I differentiate between mentoring and coaching. Yeah, and then other point that I wanted to make about how many mentors can you have and how long should you have them. My experience has been that it's better to have multiple mentors, one for each aspect that you think that person is doing best, and only you can be the judge of whether you think a person is immutable or not, right? If you want to emulate their behavior, like a certain aspect of their life, then that person would be a good mentor. But one person can never be fulfilling all your expectations in all aspects. And thus, you probably want to have multiple mentors in for different walks of life, because people will bring different experiences, different viewpoints, and that's going to enrich your own experience and your own baseline about those.
Excellent points, Naresh. Thank you. I think I was talking about multiple mentors and having multiple mentees, so your points are well taken. In fact, I would say, so I talked about running a marathon, right? That mentor clearly is different from, I have a day job where I present constantly to customers and so on, right? Actually, I don't know if my manager is on. He wanted to join, and I hope he is. His name is Bruce. And Bruce is an amazing mentor for me, right? He's been truly supportive, and he cares about the development, like you said, Naresh. He cares about me as a person. It's not just about are you performing, not just about that, right? It's obviously that's important, but Bruce is a great mentor for sales presentations, for example, because he does it really well. Then there might be a mentor for I want to learn meditation. Maybe there's a mentor for that, right? So there is a team of mentors almost that you need. And that's one reason I was saying, hey, you might need supporters, sponsors, and critiques, even that if you think in those terms, that would be interesting, right? Those kinds of mentors. Thank you, though. Great comment. I loved it. So Abhijit, how did the poll kind of work? How often?
Most people meet with their mentor once a month, 53%. 16% meet once a week, 14% meet once a year, 18% never.
Wow. Okay. Those are some interesting numbers, especially, the 18%. I really want, I think this session, hopefully, it's not just about me sharing things, but you saw some great insights come across from people attending. What we want to do is take that 18% and get them to a mentor. And take that 14% who meet once a year and get them to meet more often, and hopefully help them make their mentoring relationships even richer, right? So that's my goal as part of this session. So let's move on to the third part of this session, where we will talk about some tips. You can think of them as tips or secrets, if you will. However you think of them, right? I call it secrets because I think it really helps crack the code, if you will. Now, one of the first things I'll mention is finding a mentor. I think it was Rajesh who asked the question, how do you find that mentor? So the first thing I would say is that you need to be clear about the goals. I talked about this earlier, but having SMART goals is really important. Having short-term and long-term goals is critical, right? If you think back to the example I gave you, I wanted to run my first marathon within a year, but within 7 years, I wanted to run all 7 continents. Very time bound, very specific, and so on, right? Smart, if you will, quote unquote smart, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. Now, so that's the first point, right? The foundation is the goals that you have, whether it's short-term, long-term, or smart. The second thing, once you know that very clearly, the second thing you want to do is think about who do you look up to or who do you already know? Because chances are that you'll find a mentor in that community, right? I want to acknowledge here, Rajesh is actually one of my mentors and one of my great mentors. And this is a true story. I met Rajesh through work. And one day I was sitting down and thinking back about the impression he had made in a meeting. And so when when I thought of him and what insights he had shared, I just had to think for a minute and say, let me reach out to Rajesh. Let me meet with him and see how his values are, what he can, what his background is, what can he offer that will help me. And I can hopefully help him too in the process, right? So the important question is, who do you know? Who do you look up to? And those could be very good clues as to telling you, who could be your potential mentors. The third question that comes, is tied to finding a mentor is, where's the best place to find your mentor? Now, the workplace is a great place to start, but sometimes it's tricky to find people within the workplace. Even though I've been fortunate, I think, with my manager being also my mentor. The other obvious place is LinkedIn, right? If you look at your first level and second level connections, those are probably the best ones to really go after. LinkedIn is a great place to look through your network and say, okay, some of these people are aligned to my goals. They've done things that I want to do. And so these could be good potential mentors for you. The other place is to ask your friends, right? People, your peers, maybe they're engaging with people that you might also look up to. Maybe they can introduce you. The third area is to ask your mentors. Actually, I don't know if, again, Bruce is on the call, but the other day I was asking him, I said, hey, Bruce, you're my mentor, but who else do you look up to in the company? So it's a great way to find other mentors that maybe, Bruce looks up to or would recommend that I connect with to develop another part of what I want to develop, whether it is, maybe looking at numbers differently, when it comes to the business P&L and so on, right? So those are really good places to find mentors. The last thing I'll say is, how do you, once, when you're ready to find, you have found a mentor, you know your goals, you know who you look up to, you've looked on LinkedIn and elsewhere, now you know some names. How do you engage with this mentor? That's a really good, really important question in our minds as we start to engage with these mentors. The apt analogy here is date first and then marry. Why do I say that? Because, okay, let me actually give you a personal story. I am a product of arranged marriage, if you will, and I'm happily married to the woman of my dreams. And so while that worked really well for me, it's important to know that sometimes that, the mentor relationship, you can't take chances like that, right? You really need to date first and then marry, because you get to know the mentor, right? You by date first, I mean, you'd go grab a cup of coffee. Maybe you do an online session with your mentor these days because it's COVID, but then you actually get to know the mentor first. What's behind them? What's driving them? What are their values? How do they line up with what I want from this relationship? What do I have to offer them? By the way, that's another important question. So as much as you want to get a lot out of the mentor, maybe there's something you can also offer them. I'll address this point in a little bit, but basically these are kind of the steps in finding a mentor. Any comments, any thoughts that I didn't address? Maybe you have insights to share, questions to ask?
Hi, everybody. Hi, Satish. This is Bruce.
Oh,
It's a pleasure to join. The question you prompted to me the other day about who else would I recommend to be mentor, I think is a fantastic way to do it, because you can get close to those relationships that you have, and then find out who else is willing to help you from current mentors or other people that you trust. So I think that's a really good way to do it. And you challenged me to think about helping you further in that regard. So it's also good for the person that gets asked, because it puts them into a perspective of furthering the relationship.
oh, that's wonderful, Bruce. I'm so glad you could join. I know you were wondering if you could or not. So I'm so happy that you're here. So thank you. And those insights were great. Thank you. Anybody else?
Rajesh, go ahead.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can. By the way, Rajesh,
Okay.
should I address your question?
Yes, you did it very well. I just want to add something to, how do you find a good mentor? Sometimes you don't have to wait to ask someone. You just be part of their life, and you just start being an opportunity for them. And sooner than later, they will say, you have been doing all these things for me. What can I do for you?
Yeah.
By that time, we are already in the mentoring. It's like a presumptive clause. He's already a mentor. You just don't know it yet.
That's really great point, Rajesh. Thank you. Anyone else?
Satish, this is Harvind.
Hey, Harvind.
Hey. So you talked about engaging with the mentor. Like you got to LinkedIn, you engage with the mentor. Now, in terms of when you engage, and you suggested that not only you're going to have something that you get from the mentor, but also what you're going to offer. So when you engage, do you upfront say that potential? And sometimes these are like second level of context. You don't have a direct relationship. So do you kind of pick that these are the two things that I'm interested to kind of get from you, and these are the few things that I'm interested to kind of give you back? So how do you kind of have that kind of entice them into offering you the mentorship?
Okay, it's a great question, and I wouldn't say, and I'm happy to have others also help me answer this, because it's a really interesting and important question. I would say don't look at this as almost a barter. It's first understanding where they're coming from. Now, in the course of that engagement, right? I've said first date first and then marry. You're quote unquote dating, which is you're getting to know the mentor. And as you discover what they're about, what's important to them, what vision do they have? It's almost taking that and thinking about how you can help them, right? While you want them to be your mentor, you also, what I was saying was not necessarily looking at this as a barter, but thinking about how can I help them? Maybe they have a favorite project, maybe they have things that they want to accomplish, and maybe you can offer them. Maybe this is something that you have to judge for yourself as to when you bring it up, but something that I would do over time, and not look at this as, here's what I have to give you. Can you offer this to me, kind of, right? If you know what I mean, Arvind. It's much more subtle than that, I think. Anybody else have any responses to Arvind's question, in addition to what I said?
Yeah, this is Naresh. So I just have comment. I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying, Satish, here, that it doesn't have to be a barter relationship. In fact, having been on both sides, my experience has been, first of all, a lot of mentors, just the fact that you're asking help is enough for them to kind of be there for you and say, and they're happy to help. As a person, almost everybody is willing to help somebody. So when they see that this person is genuinely interested in seeking help, a lot of people will be willing to help. That's from reaching out to the mentor standpoint. And a lot of people are just happy to do that, even if they don't get anything out of it. Just that satisfaction of having helped somebody, making a difference in somebody else's life, is good enough for them. And at least when I've been mentoring, my experience has been that, as they say, learning something, the best way to learn something is to try to teach it to somebody. So I have learned a lot more myself just by having that interaction with a mentee.
Great
So
point.
Itself is a good reward.
Great point. Excellent point. In fact, I would say one of the things that as a mentor to a few people, it's true that I feel validated about what I'm offering as help to my mentee. It's also, in some ways you're being recognized. A grateful mentee will often say, "Hey, I really enjoy what you're sharing. This is what has happened because of what you shared." So there's that sense of fulfillment, I think, for the mentor, and that's what you're pointing out, Naresh. So great point. Thank you. All
So
right.
I have something to share, Shabir.
Please, go ahead.
I think I have a mentee, kind of unofficial, but I'm outside the Toastmaster. And what I found is he feels bad when he can't do anything for me as a mentee. So a lot of times he asks, well, how's your life? And what are you doing? So my guess is that a lot of times mentee has a need to kind of balance out and help. And if that is the case, then that is part of the mentorship to add that to it later. And some don't, some knows that. So it's just a matter of what the relationship and what the needs are of each person.
Great point.
But I agree with you. It's not a transaction.
Yeah, it's not really. So yeah, no, great point though. Thank you for sharing. I'm just keeping an eye on the clock. So let's keep going. Here's some tips about keeping a mentor, right? First thing is respecting a mentor's time. And I talked about preparation being important in that, in that relationship. So you can really you always think about, how do I respect the mentor's time? I set an agenda, there's clear outcomes I want to drive, etc. Right? So that's how you respect that mentor's time. Prepare the mentor, prepare yourself for that meeting that you're about to have. Give before you ask. I think we have talked about it ad nauseum, so that's great. Follow up promptly. I see this, different mentees that have coached or helped over time. I see that, some people follow up very promptly, and those are the ones that I'm inclined to help more, because they're following up. I see what the impact is of maybe what I've shared, etc. And then keeping them informed is also a really good practice in terms of keeping that mentor. Now, the next thing I'll share is the power of, if you can go to the next slide.
Excuse me, can I ask a question?
Yeah, just a quick one. Yeah, please go ahead.
Someone say give before you ask. What does that mean?
Oh, all I was saying, I think we talked about this. I don't know if you missed it, but basically we were saying, if there is things that you can offer, not that you have to, but in a mentoring relationship, usually the mentor is the one that is offering advice, maybe based on their skills, their experience, and so on. But oftentimes there are things that you can also possibly help the mentor. So it becomes a two-way relationship. That's what I meant by give before they ask, because there are projects that the mentor is doing, or there are things that they want to accomplish. If there's a way to help them in the process of this relationship, because keep in mind this is a two-way relationship, and so if you giving before they even ask would be a great way to maintain a strong bond between you as a mentee and your mentor. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Now, this is a favorite topic of mine, because what I realized, if you think back to my running analogy, what I realized is I had a bunch of unconscious mentors. Have you, do you go to YouTube or do you read about somebody that you admire, or maybe you look at you see a movie about somebody again that is inspiring to you. These are all unconscious mentors, right? Because they might be in the past, like Martin Luther King or Mahatma Gandhi, or even living people like Tony Robbins or so on, right? These are people that are, that may not know me, but they're still my mentor because they have taught me things without even knowing that they're teaching me. They're unconscious or silent mentors. It's an informal relationship. Obviously, they don't know that I exist even in some cases. It's not one-on-one, unlike the conscious mentors where, the mentors are known to both parties. There's a one-to-one connection and it's in person or online. Any questions on that? So, if you think about Tony Robbins, for us Toastmasters, I think a lot of people admire Tony Robbins. We admire Steve Jobs, but I've never met Tony. There's no way to meet Steve anymore. So these are all unconscious or silent mentors that have an impact on a lot of us. I just want to bring that in because they have an impact on, how you progress, how you grow. Let's go to the next chart. So just quickly, I want to cover the myths of mentoring. Abhijit, I'm not seeing the new chart. Is it progressing? All right, while he's doing that, let's talk about some of the myths of mentoring. If you think about mentoring itself, there are some myths I think we should be aware of. These are traps, if you will, that you want to avoid if you want to build a really good mentoring relationship with your mentor. So you have, one second. One second. All right, there we go. Can you put it in slideshow mode, please?
Yeah? Yes.
Thank you. And we are on the myths of mentoring, that section. All right, so one of the very common myths is mentors have all the answers. Now, and I think somebody mentioned, you want to have multiple mentors because maybe one mentor doesn't have all the answers, and maybe even your team of mentors don't have all the answers, right? So that's one to keep in mind. A lot of people say, oh, I don't need a mentor, right? Because I'm going to work hard and get to my goal. That's definitely an option, but mentoring, one of the myths is mentoring is a shortcut. Well, it's not necessarily true. I see that as accelerated learning. The third is mentors drive the relationship. Again, we talked about this. It's not necessarily true that mentors have to drive. Usually, it's better if the mentee, you're accountable to drive that relationship and get the most out of that relationship. Here's my favorite one. Mentoring leads to instant results. Definitely something that some people expect. Oh, I have a mentor and there we go. Things are going to change dramatically, very quickly and instantly, right? Then there is also mentors need to be older, not necessarily true. The mentors cannot be mentee and vice versa. By the way, I'm a perfect example of this. I'm a mentor to some, but I'm also a mentee because I have mentors in my life. Mentoring is only good for unsuccessful people. That's an interesting one, which is not true, as we know as Toastmasters. So these are all some of the common myths you come across as in the world of mentoring. All right, I think what we should do, because we are running out of time here, what I want to do is maybe Abhijit, go to the next section. Okay. So let me tell you a personal story about how mentoring has impacted my life. About 7 years ago, I was going through some major challenges and stress, both at work and personal. So I thought, okay, I need to do something about it. On a whim, I decided that I would run a full marathon and check that item off my bucket list. And as they say, one thing led to another, and very soon I wanted to run all 7 continents. And this is me having run all 7 continents. I'm humbled, I'm honored that I had the opportunity to run the 7 continents. Now, there are clearly, there's a lot of personal effort that went into, this journey. But what I want to point out is one of the most critical things that helped me get to this milestone, if you will, of having run all 7 continents in 7 years or less, is mentors, right? It's not me only that did this. As they say, it takes a village, and that's really what it took in order for me to be able to accomplish this. I had all kinds of mentors. I'll talk about some of them in this journey, and hopefully this will be a great example of how things can really help. If you have the right mentors in your life. Now, if you think about what I said about unconscious mentors, right? Next slide, please. Among the unconscious mentors I had was his name is Eliud Kipchoge. He is the fastest human being to ever run a marathon. He ran a marathon in under, I think, just over two hours, which is crazy, right? 26 miles of running in under 2 hours. It's just nuts, right? But he did it, and he's a great inspiration for me. There is Shalane Flanagan. She's the first woman to win the New York City Marathon in over 40 years. What an amazing achievement. There is Chow Smith. This is a special one to me. And this one really pushed me over that edge when I thought it was simply not possible to do all 7 continents and run a marathon across all 7 continents. This lady, I think, really turned that corner for me. Let me tell you a little bit about her. As I said, her name is Chow Smith, and she's 70 years old. She ran 7 full marathons in 7 continents in under 7 days. Think about that for a minute. That's just amazing, right? So when I was thinking, hey, is it even possible to do this? I read this story in 2017, just after 2017, and I was thinking, man, if Chow can do it, I bet I can too, right? In getting to that goal that I talked about. Now, there is also Tom Gilligan, who ran a majority of marathons in Antarctica. You can see him here. So all these are unconscious mentors that made a difference. Now let's talk about conscious mentors. These are really, Abhijit, if you can go to the next slide. These are people that make a difference and that you interact with one-on-one. Now, to me, there are 3 categories here, right? There is fans or supporters, there is sponsors, and then there is critics. Now, by the way, Abhijit, it's not showing up, but that's okay. I can keep going. Just go to the next slide. Now, one of the most important supporters that I've had is my wife, Deepa. Now, last year when I was about to run the Antarctica Marathon, I came home one day and I told Deepa, hey, I'm going to run in Antarctica. And, instead of saying, what do you mean you're going to run in Antarctica? Isn't that dangerous? Isn't that crazy? She instead said, well, if that's your dream, you ought to follow it. I know you'll make the right decision for me and the rest of the family. And so, if you think about somebody like Deepa, I've been fortunate to have her, and she has been, a great supporter of mine. The second type is a sponsor. Now, I'll tell you a quick story. When I was running the San Francisco Marathon, this lady, I had these cramps on mile 23, and this lady came alongside me at mile 23 as I was standing there on the side of the road and about to give up. She says, hey, run if you can, walk if you must, crawl if you have to, never give up. And those words really helped me across that finish line. She actually held my hand and walked me across that finish line on my very first marathon. To this day, I think about her because I think that would not have been possible if she had not helped me then. And then lastly, critics, right? These are the people that truly help you. They might sound, very too open at times, right? Too direct, but these are the people that truly can help you. And my example is when I was running my first marathon, I remember running up this hill, and then alongside came this friend of mine. His name is Prasanna. He says, Satish, you're not doing it right? You're not really, you seem to be flailing. So you need to really pump your hands in order to climb that hill. That single tip, it may have sounded like a critique, but he was offering constructive criticism as evaluators do in Toastmasters. And that single tip actually changed my life in terms of how I ran those marathons, because a lot of times I would come across these hills and pumping my arms was the way I could get up that hill. So my point is, critics are great mentors too. All right, so let's now, I'm going to keep going here. The last part is really summary and call to action. The key, there are three things if I want to summarize all of this and help you kind of, what are the key takeaways, right? I would say three things. SMART goals are really the key because they lead you to the right kind of mentor or mentors that you want in your life. Second is to find, choose, and keep the right mentors is again key because this is a developing relationship over time. And third is keep in mind that mentors are about accelerating your achievement. And if there's one thing that mentors do for you is that acceleration that would have otherwise taken you much longer to achieve. Right, with that, I want to just stop and ask if there are questions. We are pretty much at the top of the hour. I want to be respectful of your time, but hopefully that helped you. I can stay back and ask if there are any questions. Has this been helpful? Yeah, go ahead.
What made you to want to run marathon on all 7 continents?
Oh my God. I don't think we have that much time here, but I'll say this. I mean, I mentioned about stress and so on. My children also inspired me, right? My children, I remember this was 7 years ago, and they asked me if it was possible to run a marathon and if it was possible to run in Antarctica. And I remember saying, anything is possible. And, it was easy for me to say that, but now I had to do it, right? So, I was physically out of shape. I wanted to get better at my physical fitness. I wanted to prove that it's possible to myself more than anybody, it's not about anybody else, it's to myself. And that's what kind of led me to say, if I put my mind to it, I can get it done.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, thank you for your teaching. Can I ask a question?
Please.
Yeah, you said we should go through date first and then marry process to get the right mentor, right? But in our club, I was assigned to mentoring a new member. I don't think I'm qualified, but my VPE think I'm about ready to mentoring some new members. So I think, well, then I just give a try, but I kind of have a pressure if I can do a right job. So how can I equip myself to be a good mentor?
Yeah, the first thing, I mean, the formal role is one thing, right? I think Rajesh said it well. If you keep, in my club, I offer help to people, and some of them are actually on the call. I offer help to people when I can. For example, one of the members, I offered her to help her with her speech. What I'm saying is, I mean, of course you can help people as an official mentor, but if you have the right attitude and you want to help people, if that's what this is about, then starting to offer help without waiting for it to be formally assigned, you won't, maybe it's hard to believe, but some of these relationships over time actually change into a mentor-mentee relationship. Does that help?
Yeah.
What I'm saying is you don't need to wait for the formal, is the VP giving me this title of mentor or not? Because I bet all you want to do is make an impact to that club member. And if, because that's what it's about, you can start even without an official title.
Okay.
Would anybody add anything else?
Yes, this is me. I'd like to add a few things from mentee perspective. I'm relatively new in Toastmasters. I would love somebody to show me some basic ropes, how to get on a pathway, how to get on a website, how to attend a meeting, what's the format. And unfortunately, I don't have somebody.
VP? Who's your VP? Which club are you part of?
Now I signed up myself being MVP because I'm new. I'm so excited about this. I don't know what I'm doing.
That's interesting. All right. I think we can.
I'm just like Toastmaster. I'm just very super excited about it. But what I want to tell the other lady is she can do a lot for a new member because new member know nothing about it. Anything you tell her will tell him or her, she will love and soak it up as long as you're encouraging.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, those are basics. I know how to guide the new members. But I just wondering, can I really accelerate his achievement? That's really, I kind of worry if I can do that.
I would say don't worry about that. How long have you been a Toastmaster?
4 years.
Fantastic. I bet you have, if you think about some of the new members that come to your club, they would love to hear from somebody who has been around. There are so many things I bet you can teach this member. So just offer that help and they'll be so grateful for your help, as I think Ming also was saying. Right? Just offer that help to start with. A lot more than you probably realize that can help these new members.
Okay, I'll try.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? I know we are over time. Please feel free to drop off. There'll be a survey afterwards. We'll also send you a copy of the presentation and a copy of the worksheet.
Thank you so much, Satish.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed your workshop. One thing resonated with me is that I need to have a mentor outside of Toastmasters. Currently, I don't have one. Thank you, everyone. Please join us on August 15th at 10 a.m. We have special guest, Craig Valentine. He's going to talk about present with ease and persuade with impact. See you on August 15th at 10 a.m. Thank you so much.